Stand by. Okay, we are recording. When you're asking questions, please use the Q&A function in Zoom. We won't be answering questions in the chat or verbally. What's going to happen is we have a team who is both writing out the answers, and then also will be teeing up questions for me and John to answer aloud. And then the request is on my end. Who is going to be reading the questions? Is that James or JD?
I can read questions.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Let's do a quick round of introductions. So, Pockets, you mind going first?
Yeah, no problem. Hey, everybody. This is John McKenney, collectively referred to as Pockets, from the SBIR Center of Excellence Contracting. So it's our office that issues the X20.R solicitation. So here to answer any questions, which I'm assuming there will be a few, regarding that solicitation.
Yeah, and anything that's too hard for me to answer, which will probably be many, I'm going to defer to John. So get ready, John. Okay, so next up, JD, you want to go next?
Yeah, this is Jeff Dillard. I'm an aerospace engineer, actually a reservist, supporting Steve and the SBIR team right now.
Awesome, thanks. James?
James Colerain, reservist as well. AFWERX on the SBIR team.
Great, and now I see, I think we have Kyle Wright has joined as well. He might have dropped off. He's another member of the AFWERX team who's going to be joining us as well. And I'm Steve Lawver, Air Force Ventures. Worked quite a bit with the SBIR program and AFWERX as well. So this is scheduled for 1 hour. I will have to jump at that time. John, if you do have any bandwidth and there's more questions, if you wouldn't mind, if you're up for staying on, I can leave the bridge open. Does that sound possible?
I'm actually going to tell you, I was going to tell you the opposite. I actually have to jump off about 5 minutes before 3 because I have another 3 o'clock. So all right, sorry, man.
No, not at all. Then we're going to move blazing fast on this. Let's get started. All right, very quickly, if you go to afwerx.af.mil and you hover over for industry, it will give you a drop down. And then there's one of them is the SBIR open topic. So you'll be able to read more about it there. Really, we've removed a lot of the content there, and it will just have relevant links. The one that you'll care about after this is the recording. And Kyle, you might be unmuted. Okay, you're good now. But yeah, you'll be able to find the recording of this video up at the AFWERX webpage on the SBIR page. Okay, again, AF20.R-DCS01. Very quickly on how to find it. So if you just go into a search engine and you search for SBIR portal, SBIR portal, this will be the first one that you see. And it has DSIP in the top left, Defense SBIR STTR Innovation Portal. You can click topics in the top right. And then when you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a number of tabs for all of the services and agencies that have open SBIRs at the moment. You'll notice that I think there's DARPA, Air Force, and now Navy are posted there. When you click the Air Force tab, you will see all the documents that we're referencing today. This snapshot that I have here is a little outdated. There's actually been 2 amendments, and the documents in the attachment sections have been updated as well. But the actual source document around the rules of how do you apply to this program, that is in the instructions section there. And then any of the things that we reference, the customer memorandum, the fund matching form, and then the focus areas for COVID, those are found just below it. Okay, really quick look, and then I think we'll spend most of the time doing a Q&A for this one. This is an up to $1 million funding opportunity funded by SBIR, Small Business Innovative Research, that can go to small businesses doing innovative research. So those, to be eligible, those companies have to be US owned and controlled, and they must be a small business concern. So that's less than 500 employees, including any affiliates. The full information is in the link that we have posted there. And so please do go check that out. One question we often get is whether or not a company that is greater than 50% venture capital or hedge fund owned can apply. The answer for this one is no, they would not be eligible. In the future, we may look into invoking an exception that addresses that. The soonest would be in 20.2. But again, if that happens, it would end up in the source document, which is the solicitation. For this one, we do not have that ability. This solicitation closes on April 30th at noon Eastern time. And so no late proposals will be accepted. Please start early, submit early. Traffic towards that time tends to increase pretty drastically, which may result in it slowing down. So please get in and submit early. Some other things, very high level, the premise behind this program is that one of the most important parts of testing the feasibility of your solution and one of the most important parts of innovation research is understanding the problem deeply. And so typically in a phase one, which is not this, but just to give context, typically in a phase one, a lot of that time is spent understanding the problem and understanding how your solution can be adapted and expanded to solve that problem. One of the ways, and really one of the things we care about here, is that we're not going to invest SBIR funds into a solution that nobody in the Air Force wants. And so the way that we've been able to capture the interest from an actual Air Force end user and customer is through this thing called the customer memorandum. And we can pull that up here in a little bit, but just very high level. One, it's one of those attachments that was on the DSIP portal that we talked about. And two, it is required, and you'll see this in the solicitation, it is required to have a signed customer memorandum to be eligible for this topic. And it is filled out by the Air Force customer and end user who are interested in your solution. And there's several sections. The template guides you through what information is needed. It also has to be signed by them. Some of the other elements of this customer memorandum are a schedule of milestones. So we want to know that if we fund this with our up to $1 million from SBIR, that you have a coherent plan with your Air Force customer to actually execute that phase 2 trial. Right? And so that includes a list of milestones that are agreed upon and again, signed by your Air Force customer. You'll also see a non-proprietary work plan. The reason we have this is that we want and again, this is an attachment on your customer memorandum. The reason that we have this is that we want your Air Force customer and end user to know what they're signing up for. So not just the deliverables, which are in the milestone schedule we talked about, but also what is the plan, what is the work that is to be accomplished in general and in some specific terms around this phase 2 effort. So all of that must be included for you to be eligible. Please read through the instructions to make sure that you do have that. Another question we often get is there matching funding? Is there some ratio that applies for matching funding? And I want to answer that very quickly before we go into the Q&A, because I'm sure we'll get questions on that. The answer is the ceiling of SBIR funds you can get, regardless of if there is any non-government funding or non-SBIR funding or private funding that is being put up against this effort, the maximum you can get is $1 million of SBIR funds, period. So we do not modulate the amount we can give you based on the presence or lack of any other funding put against this effort. That said, you will notice that one of the criteria on which we evaluate you is commercialization potential. And one of the items discussed within that criterion, which is in section 6 of the solicitation, is the presence of outside funding, whether government or non-government. Right. So long story short is it is not required, but it does reflect positively in your proposal per those evaluation criteria. And then if you do have a government customer who doesn't have necessarily or doesn't want to award the contract themselves at the moment, they can send funding. There's some rules around this, but they can send funding to our team and we can execute that as part of the phase 2 award. So in an example, if you had a government customer that had, let's say, $2 million that they wanted to put up against this phase 2 effort to expand the scope of the effort, then when you propose, you could propose up to $1 million of SBIR funds, up to $2 million or that $2 million from your government customer, which makes the total $3 million overall. So I just want to point out that yes, we can accept government funds. Yes, we care about whether or not you're bringing other funds to the table, whether government or non-government, but the ceiling is $1 million is the maximum from us in SBIR, period. So enough on that. I wanted to foot stomp that before we got started. John, anything else before we jump into the Q&A? You might be on mute.
Yeah, my phone wouldn't let me hit the button. Oh yeah, no, you're good. We can jump right in.
Okay, awesome. Oh, and one more thing too is, as I know that there is a focus area for COVID-19, the subject of this call today is not COVID-19, but realize it's one of the things we care about. The rules around whether or not you're solving a COVID-19 related issue or it's any other dual use solution, the rules are exactly the same. So you still need that customer memorandum. All the same evaluation criteria apply. So, sometimes you get questions of, do I still need a 15-slide pitch deck? Do I still need the full technical volume, et cetera, et cetera? The answer is yes, even if you're addressing a COVID-19 related solution. So without further ado, let's jump into the questions.
Okay, the first question, please confirm that a less than 15-month contract is okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Here's another question. Will the government consider a 1-week extension for submission?
No, one thing I will point out though is that right around the corner is 20.2. So it goes on May 6th into pre-release where you can see the instructions on that DSIP portal. In early June, it goes into, it's an open status, so you can submit against it. And July 2nd is when it closes. So the answer is no for this one, unfortunately, but there is another opportunity around the corner.
Is it okay to mix SBIR funding and non-SBIR funding in a specific task/deliverable?
In a single deliverable. So, John, I think the answer is we have to separate these out, even if, you know, they're different colors or if they're the same color of money. Sorry. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, that's not really a question that's necessarily appropriate for this type of forum, but the short answer is no. The longer answer is that type of information is determined by the contracting team during negotiations.
Okay. Yeah. And okay. Yeah, that's enough on that one. Thanks, John.
What's the difference between the work plan and the schedule of milestones?
Yeah, good question. So you'll see that when we ask you to fill out the work plan in the proposal instruction, so that solicitation, it discusses what items we want you to address. And just very quickly, when I was talking about the schedule of milestones, that's actually a requirement that we also have on the customer memorandum, and it talks about it a little bit, right? So a schedule of milestone is like a table of what is the task, you know, what are the delivery instructions, how much money is associated with that, when is it due? Right? It's just a list of things that will ultimately be translated after negotiation and selection and all those things into the deliverables that you have to deliver on the phase 2 if you're selected and awarded. Right? The work plan is a long form description of the work that is being done, but there are certain items that we ask for that, again, it's highlighted in the technical volume section of the solicitation. John, anything I missed on that or misspoke?
No, that sounded good.
Is there a template for the non-proprietary work plan?
There's not a template. And again, there's items that we wish for you to discuss that are talked about in the technical volume section of the solicitation, but there's not a template created for it.
There is a section regarding phase 1 results, but since this is a direct to phase 2, how do I address this section?
Yeah, really good question. So there are, again, in the solicitation, they talk about some of the elements that go into that section. But in general, a direct to phase 2 is making the assumption that you completed the work that would have been done in phase 1 out of the context of phase 1. So you did that on your own in some way, right? So we want you to capture that information. I'm not going to say line by line the things that we want here because I don't want to create unstated criteria or things that we've asked for, but just realize it talks about this in the solicitation, the items that we want. And so when you're writing that, do it through the lens that copy, you didn't do a phase 1, but the things that got you to the point at which you are today, a signed customer memorandum, any type of matching funds that we discuss, all of that, what got you to today? And so that's kind of what would be in lieu of a phase 1 in this case, because this is a direct phase 2.
Direct to phase 2 instructions refer to a SAMI number. We have DUNS. Can we still use DUNS?
I think the answer is yes to that. John?
Yeah, that's correct. It's the same thing. There's a process ongoing of conversion from DUNS to SAMI. It's the exact same number, though.
Please provide more information on these and if they are mandatory. 1, a cover sheet supplement certification / eligibility check, and assigned standalone section K.
Yep. So these are 2 items that you'll see discussed in the solicitation as being things that we asked for. So yes.
Is there an updated document that includes the Amendment 1 language?
No. So when amendments are posted, there's 2, but they just have the original and then they have the text of what has changed. They have not been combined into a single document.
We're getting a couple questions on where are these recordings going to be located?
We're going to post them to afwerx.mil/sbir.html. And if you just go to the AFWERX website, then you hover over for industry, you'll see SBIR open topic. That is the place.
There is a mention about list of reviewers within the key personnel section. How and what do I address in this?
List of reviewers. I can start searching for that. John, unless you have any answer to that already.
Yeah, I'm not certain about that either. we can look into it, I guess.
So it's in the key personnel section. Credentials. Stand by. Yeah, I'm in that section now. I don't see anything about a list of reviewers. Please clarify as a follow-on question, and we'll get to it if there's something we're misreading there.
For the MOU, can the Air Force customer and the Air Force end user be the same person? For example, the technology is a satellite GPS power amplifier. Can the Space Branch Director qualify as both the Air Force customer and the end user?
It's a good question. In general, the end user is whoever is going to actually operationally benefit from the solution, and the customer is whoever is empowered and able and has the authority to acquire that solution. There's nothing that precludes them from being the same person, but realize if that is the case, that the case needs to be made that they are. They both are buying, and they're buying for themselves to use. And again, that's not typically the case. So make sure to have that clarified in the memorandum if so.
In the instructions 5.2 appendix for phase 1 feasibility, where do we submit this appendix? In our tech volume, we address feasibility results. What's the difference?
Good question. So address that, within the constraints of the technical volume, which again is only up to 15 pages. And then you can have additional supplemental information on that feasibility study. So the phase 1 results in your volume 5, which is the supplemental documents.
Does US owned and controlled include L1 visa holders as owners?
So really good question. I don't know the answer. John, we can look into this.
Yeah, that is not a question I have a direct response to. So why don't we take that offline, get it written down, and we'll look up a specific answer for it.
Okay.
Regarding the signing persons for the MOU, do you prefer 2 signatures, user POC and customer POC, or can it be either?
We asked for 2.
Given the wide variety of topics, is there already a quota set for which topics are given a priority?
Nope. So there's no priority industry or topic area. One of the way that is represented is in the ability to get a customer memorandum, right? So this is kind of being throttled in the background in that if a customer already has enough solutions around a certain subject, then they won't keep signing memoranda for that.
Hey, Steve, let me add on to that real quick, because that sounds like a question that is kind of drawn out of sort of the traditional model where there are actual topics, right? And so let's stress that these are focus areas. So these are the type of technologies that the Air Force is interested on a whole. It's not like it's separated where there's going to be a specific amount of awards per focus area. They are not topics, they are focus areas.
Awesome. Super helpful. Thanks.
Is it acceptable to have more than one PDF document uploaded for the other supporting documents? I am worried about the size restriction for a single document on DSIP.
That's a good question. I actually don't know. I know in the past and previous system, it's combined. They were combined to one document. John, do you know about this?
I do not know, but I guess my answer would be I would presume that you would be able to attach multiple PDFs if you were restricted by size. I don't have a specific answer though.
Yeah, and the other piece is if it actually allows you to do that. So just a general piece of advice is once you've uploaded something, make sure that it didn't overwrite the previous one. So also change the name. We've seen that happen with customer memorandums in the past. And then the other thing too is you'll notice that in the solicitation, they have who you should contact with different types of question. And then it has the contact for issues related to the portal itself. So that one would not be us per se.
Yeah, Steve, I was going to say, there's some information in the solicitation about the specific, the portal itself and the help desk for that. So I would recommend who's ever asking that question, contact those folks and they'll be able to give you a good answer.
Do the matching funds from a government customer have to come from an Air Force customer?
No, good question. So, we stress that there needs to be at least one Air Force customer who has signed a memorandum, but there can be other customers that are non-Air Force as well, as long as the work that is being accomplished is mutually agreed upon by all parties. And also in that vein, you can have non-Air Force sources of matching funding. Again, if the Air Force customer is okay with the scope that is being requested outside of the Air Force.
Seems like we've got a number of questions too about getting customer memorandums from non-Air Force customers.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying that's okay, but they have to at least have one Air Force customer.
Correct.
For the 15-page slide deck, it instructs us to have one slide for pricing and to include invoices for references, but our pricing is confidential. Can you explain what we need for this slide exactly?
So in general, from like I can talk to the slides, but John, from a cost volume type perspective and any mention of pricing, do they need to be, if something is confidential or proprietary or they don't want to release it, what's the approach you typically see?
Well, your pricing information is going to be, in terms of this, it's going to be protected by the source selection information. So you're going to have to provide pricing. There is no shortcut around that. In terms of the slide, which I think is a specific question, that's more of that's a tech requirement. So I guess theoretically, if you guys were, okay with not seeing it, there wouldn't be necessarily any harm there, but you will be expected to provide a full cost volume with all of your pricing detail. And if you don't, if there's no way for contracting to review pricing and validate everything, you're not going to be eligible for an award.
Yeah. And so on my end for the slide deck, just realize we can only evaluate your proposals based on what is actually contained in the proposal. So if you're electing to leave something out, we can't make an assessment on whatever that item is. Of course, that is something that is available to you to do. There are certain things that if they're not present, like the customer memorandum, as an example, that we just we won't evaluate it, period. It would be screened out. But in this example, it would just be a piece of content that we do not have access to the information. So we wouldn't be able to take that into account during the evaluation.
Let's see here. Could you explain the funding stream? Our end user has questions, concerns on whether this funding can be used for operational purposes.
John, I could take a hack. Do you want to take this one? I know there's been discussions on this.
Steve, I really don't have an answer on that one, I don't think.
Okay. So, part of this too is in terms of, so an example would be, you are creating something as part of this kind of innovation research effort, right? But then some element of that is the user getting hands-on the thing that you've created to be able to give iterative feedback. So a number of licenses to that thing created as an example. So the question is kind of geared towards, well, then can we have some of this be the item we're creating through innovation research, and can one aspect of that be more oriented towards something like ops and maintenance type of money? That is a really nuanced question. And so I guess what I would say there is that, do your best in the proposal to propose the things that you're wanting to do. The customer memorandum should capture the intent of what the customer wants, but there will be a phase of this where the contract officer is going through and doing negotiations and back and forth, and that stuff may need to be clarified at that point in time. John, is that a good assessment?
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and you foot-stomped the important point there, which is the purpose of this program, the SBIR program overall, and the purpose of this solicitation is to acquire cutting-edge innovative research. So there must be a research, R/R&D component to everything that's going on. That must be the primary component. So, but you phrased it exactly right, I think, Steve.
Okay, right on.
Is the COVID topic SBIR also deadlined on the 30th?
So there is no COVID-specific SBIR. So when we talk in the COVID-19 AMAs on Tuesdays now, and Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do bring up this SBIR. But when we were talking about it, it was actually this one. We just had a COVID-19 focus area. So there are not two separate solicitations for SBIR.
Is 20.2 going to be a direct to phase 2 as well?
Good question. So John, can I speak to what is coming in generalities, or do we just have to wait till May 6th?
So why don't you I'll take care of it. So in terms of, and I'll speak to it in generalities. Historically, yes, for every SBIR solicitation, or the majority of them, you would see the phase 1 solicitation, so the 20.2 phase 1, as well as a 20.2 direct to phase 2. Now, the major caveat is that is not on the street yet. So until that solicitation comes out, you can assume that more than likely there would be a direct to phase 2, but there is no guarantee of it. And you just, unfortunately, the answer is you got to wait until the solicitation comes out.
Yeah. May 6th is right around the corner.
Can AFWERX provide any examples of a one-page sales pitch or the 100-second video?
John, what do you think? Can we post this to the AFWERX website, or is it too late in the game that not enough people would have seen it?
Samples of the sales pitch or the video? I mean, some of the videos are on YouTube, I think. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Samples of a sales pitch, I'd be concerned with the posting of potentially proprietary information. So it's probably something that can't be posted formally, I think would be the answer. Yeah, and I want to just throw out there with the videos. I mean, a 100-second video does not mean that we need Hollywood production quality. And we also recognize that your access to a studio is probably limited at the moment. So again, this is just another way that speaks to more than just the kind of written learner that is able to convey your value proposition in a compelling way. So even if that means that you're filming with devices like your phone and your computer and you're compiling it on your own, that is, in theory, is okay. But I just, I want to say we don't expect it to be Hollywood quality.
If your business currently has a phase 1 Air Force SBIR that began in 2019, might you still be invited to submit a phase 2 proposal, or are you able to apply for a phase 2 for that topic through AFWERX?
So good question. Just a second left. So the phase 1s that are active right now, at least for the Air Force Ventures topic, are 20.1. Those weren't awarded in December or in 2019. So this might be referring to another SBIR phase 1. My answer to that is yes, potentially. And in general, like, you can apply to a direct to phase 2, but it cannot be based solely on the work that you did in a phase 1. So if you're going to do that, there must have been additional innovation research and progress and traction with the solution you're building, aside from what was done during the SBIR phase 1. John, am I right on that, or?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Cool.
Does this whole SBIR award have to be 100% applied to development versus allocating a portion of the award to acquire existing product, e.g. limited trial licenses to perform that type of prototyping?
John, you mind taking this one? Just a second.
Yeah, could I get a second read of that question?
Yeah, definitely. Does this whole SBIR award have to be 100% applied to development versus allocating a portion of the award to acquire existing product, e.g. a limited trial license to perform that type of prototyping?
That's a nuanced question. So it's kind of difficult to say. Each individual solution is a little bit unique. It sounds like the bulk of the work in this case would be the research and development piece in there, but part of the solution might be that buying that existing product as part of the trial. So what I would say on that is the technical proposal just needs to be very explicit as to what exactly is going on and how the potential purchase of that existing product would flow into the research that would be done. That's about as far as I can go on that, from a contracting perspective.
John, I think that's great. And I think that's super helpful in the context of the question. Thanks.
How are you thinking about venture-backed commercial company that has future commercial customers, signed MOUs, but does not already have commercial users because the commercial product is still in development?
Yeah, so I can't necessarily, because if I were to say, we think about it in a certain way, it would be giving a glimpse into the way that we conduct the evaluation. So I would just point you back to the things we're actually evaluating you on are those 3 criteria in section 6. So the commercialization potential, the defense need, and then the technical merit of the solution and the ability of the team to execute against the plan. So from a commercial perspective, you'll notice there's a lot of things that we address that speak to the commercialization potential there. So that's all I can say on that.
That's for you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's Daddy.
In the volume 2 key personnel, do we need to identify non-US citizens for non-key personnel? Also, the related work section states list reviewers providing comments regarding the offerer's knowledge of the state of the art in the specific approach proposed. Can you clarify what this is?
Okay. Key personnel. So I'm pulling up that section now because I don't have an immediate answer. And while I'm pulling it up, John, do you have any insight into that?
Doing the same thing you are, pulling it up. Can you read the question again while we're looking at this?
Sure thing. It says, in the volume 2 key personnel, do we need to identify non-US citizens for non-key personnel? Also, the related work section states, list reviewers providing comments regarding the offerer's knowledge of the state of the art in the specific approach proposed. Can you clarify what that is?
All right, so on the first point, you need to identify all your key personnel, and it's kind of a secondary thing. You need to identify all non-US citizens, whether or not they are designated as key personnel by your definition or not. So that's the answer to that first part. I don't really, let's take that second part offline and get a written response on it, because I don't really have an answer to that part.
Copy. If we submit multiple proposals to 20.R and are selected for both, will we have to choose only one to move forward with, or can we be awarded 2 phase 2 contracts, but for different work, different users on 20.R?
Yeah. So you could be awarded multiple direct to phase 2 awards for different work.
If we have not, let's see, actually, if we have not identified a consultant or subcontractor currently as part of the proposal, but identify one in the future, what is our ability to shift dollars from a previously identified bucket, i.e. direct labor, to this newly identified consultant or subcontractor? As long as the dollars don't increase and we get AFWERX's approval, is that permissible?
So off the top of my head, I think the answer would be yes, but it would require a contract modification. And so there'd be some back and forth with your contract officer. John, any additional thoughts on that?
It's possible that it could require a contract mod, but not entirely. It wouldn't entirely be mandated. So what would happen in that case is, if it would change the nature of a negotiated milestone, meaning like a time that it would be delivered, or it would theoretically change the price, then something like that would be negotiated in order to change then the contract that was agreed upon. But if it's just a strategic change to the way that you're getting to that deliverable, there's no requirement for any pre-approval or anything on that nature.
All right.
Since there is no matching in 20.R, our government user wants to commit money to our effort. How do we convey this on the MOU, section 4, still under matching, and in the proposal application? Should we still fill out the rapid form? If we request 1 million and our gov user is committing 250K, should our milestones be written as 1.25 million effort?
Yeah, really good question. So when the non-government or when the government user providing non-SBIR funds provides their funds to us to execute on top of the phase 2 award, then your total award amount is the SBIR funds plus the non-SBIR government funds.
How soon after the application submission is the solution pitch video due?
So good question. It's actually not a video that you submit to us. It's a video call, right? So think of that as the due diligence that occurs after the initial round of our evaluations. So I don't know off the top of my head what we say for timelines on that, but what we do say is we anticipate within 30 days having made selection decisions, and within 60 days is the target to make the awards. So the answer then would be that sometime within 30 days of the close of solicitations when we expect to have all that done. Back that up, I guess, however long it would take to do due diligence, which we can't necessarily predict, but I think that's at least a starting point.
Essentially equivalent work notification. If we have submitted a similar idea in a white paper format to a government entity, does that count? And does that hurt our chances on winning this direct to phase 2 SBIR?
John, can you take that one? I don't know.
All right, I want to make sure I answer this right, so I'm going to ask for a repeat again. I'm writing these notes and then making sure we hit these the
We're
right way.
asking,
We're getting very detailed questions now.
These are great questions.
So this is essentially equivalent work question. If we submitted a similar idea in white paper form to a government entity, does that count? And does it hurt our chances of winning this direct to phase 2?
So I'm not sure exactly the answer to the does it count. If we're going to say does it count that the work has been done already, then the answer would be no, because you haven't. A white paper is just an idea, right? You haven't been put on contract. Now, what I would probably advise in that case that is done is it's going to ask you in the solicitation, have you been paid for this work before? Are you on contract for this? And you should identify, if it's the same solution that you've proposed, you should identify, yes, we have proposed this, and this is where we've proposed it under before. And what will happen at that point is the contracting team will ask you, what's the status? So if you've been on contract for something, we're not going to fund it again under this SBIR solicitation. So it's just a unique situation. So I would just say, if you've proposed for it before, or it's being worked under another as a potential award, you do need to acknowledge that.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
We're getting some more questions on here about that May 6th upcoming SBIR. They're wondering if there's going to be COVID-19 topics assigned to it as well.
So yeah, we can't release whether or not there will or will not. I'll say that I don't think this issue is going away all that quickly. So it could be estimated that there might be. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. We can't say for sure right now.
If the SBIR project is built on a commercial product, can we include the price of the commercial product in ODC in the cost proposal?
Other direct costs. Cost volume question, John. I would think that could be used as evidence for that, but I don't know if you can.
Yeah, it's probable that it would need to be included in that cost if the proposal requires purchase, actual purchase of that commercial product to do the research and development, then you would need to include that cost in the cost volume. And since it's a commercial product, I would say ODC is most likely where it would make the most sense. But it's one of those situations that it's, specific to an individual solution. So really hard to answer at a kind of a top level perspective.
Yeah, and so looking at other direct costs, just the definition we have there is this category of costs includes specialized services such as machining or milling, special testing or analysis, specialized equipment leases, etc. And it says proposals including leased hardware must provide an adequate lease versus purchase justification or rationale. So it almost seems like you're making the ask of, can you lease equipment from yourself in the ask? I don't know. I think this would be one that just as we've answered previously would end up being discussed with the contract officer during negotiations.
We had a phase 1 before. Can the title of the proposal be the same?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. But again, you'll need to be able to differentiate what work has occurred since the conclusion of the phase 1 to make this a new effort.
Can we hire foreign consultants?
I think the answer is yes. You would just need to identify them as subcontractors. And I think, do we have to mention foreign citizens, those with involvement that are subcontractors, John?
Yeah. So if you're proposing and you're including, named subcontractors or named consultants in your proposal, and that question about non-U.S. citizens is obviously in there, and you're expected to answer to that they are a part of your team. They are a part of the proposal and the solution. So you're answering on behalf of the sub and the consultant at that level too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so when you look at section 3.7, when it's defining foreign nationals, it does mention that it can be, it also means any foreign corporation, business association, partnership, trust, society, etc. But anyhow, thanks, John.
We got another question similar on that, saying there seems to be some confusion around the info requested on citizenship. In particular, the RFP requests info on foreign nationals, which excludes US persons, yet at the same time requests info on US citizenship.
John, do you know this one? Another in the weeds. Four.
I don't.
Non-US citizens.
If the individual that asked the question would like to cite the section that they're referring to, that would probably help. But why don't we keep this moving along, and we can tackle that one.
Okay. In the past, it has been allowable to put startup costs in the first milestone, up to 25%, I believe. Is there an allowable amount for this solicitation?
If anything that we do have is allowable would find itself into the solicitation itself. I mean, I believe, John, is that true, or is there an allowance?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any previous SBIR solicitations that included language that specifically stated that startup costs are allowed up to a specific percentage. The costs that are allowed are the costs that are tied to the specific research or research development solution of the individual proposal that's being submitted. So, that's the short answer to that one.
And also, one thing to look out for in future rounds is while this one was already on the street, this solicitation, we had a lot of kind of executive order type guidance come down related to COVID-19. And some of those have to do with mitigating the impacts for small businesses. And there's some things associated with that can potentially be negotiated into the clauses of the contract, for instance, paying a certain amount upfront. And that sounds like it's in line with that. I would just say that it's not in this solicitation, unfortunately, and then just keep your eyes peeled for that in 20.2 potentially.
The MOU lists 4 separate points of contacts required as follows: a lead end user POC, an alternate end user POC, lead customer POC, alternate customer POC. Are 4 separate POCs really required?
So the answer to that is yes. But again, if we recognize that in those rare cases, the end user and the customer may be the same, then in that case, it can be, one individual is listed twice in that example. Otherwise, I think in most cases, yeah, we do want to have a primary and an alternate for both the end user and customer, because there's going to come times that maybe the primary, this happens all the time. Maybe they move, maybe they are out of pocket for a long period of time, and we might need to be able to reach out to them in a timely way.
Are seed investors such as individuals, university, law firms considered towards the 50% requirement when adding up the total venture capital ownership?
Are seed investors involved? So I think the answer to that is yes. John, do you know off the top of your head? I think the answer is yes, but maybe there's a place we can find that to point to.
Was it our seed investors?
Yep.
Unfortunately, I don't have it.
Considered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an answer to that one. Sorry, we'll have to take that offline and look.
What do you mean by buying? Do they need to have control of a program of record that will be a part of? I'm guessing that's on the customer side.
So not always, right? So the existence of a program of record is helpful, and that's where a lot of the money lies in the Air Force. But the answer isn't summarily yes to that. I think there will be cases that is not the case. What we just want you to do is to be able to capture why the customer is the customer and has the ability to have authority over this particular acquisition. And also, I'm looking at the language, section 3.20. It says an SBC must satisfy the following conditions on the date of award. And it says, is more than 50% directly owned and controlled by one or more individuals who are citizens or permanent resident aliens of the United States, other small business concerns. So I guess this doesn't necessarily answer disregard. So I was trying to read through that answer as well. I will keep looking for that one. Next question.
Can the budget posted online to the submission site enter the data as fully burdened hourly costs, such as would be done for a T&M LH contract, as long as DCAA documentation on proposer rates are provided?
Unknown. John, do you know this one?
I mean, the answer is you can propose however you see fit. When it's, the contracting team that's going to go through the process of determining fair and reasonable costs is going to look at those things. So if you choose to propose fully burdened rates, which I think was kind of the general context of the question, having DCAA backup, that would be fine in theory. So just, I would caution, if you're going to do that, make sure you have the backup, and then that's included as well. It's sort of the basis for how you got to your costs.
2 questions around the same. Is there a minimum length period for the award? And is it possible to confirm the award for the proposal before the 60-day timeline?
So to the second one first, actually both of them. So no, there's no minimum. If you look at section 5.3, what we say is it is up to 27 months. It doesn't say a range. And then the second piece is, 30 days is the estimated amount of time to be able to notify you of your selection status. The 60 days is for the target for actual award.
DHA is an organization that supports every service to include the Air Force. If the MOU is signed by a USN or USA service member, but is clearly communicated that this supports the Air Force, is that acceptable?
No, unfortunately, we would need an Air Force stakeholder who's making that assessment. So another example is with special operations, right? So SOCOM has all services represented, but we still, in the cases that SOCOM is an interested party, we ask that it's someone who is an Air Force member of that organization to be able to vouch for that.
Hey, Steve. Hey, I have to bounce off. So if there's any other specific contracting ones that are, which I'm sure there are, because it looks like there's still quite a few in the queue, just let me know and we can get responses on them.
Okay, I'm going to go off the rails for these last 10 minutes, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, thanks,
See you
John.
guys.
See ya.
Thanks. For project plan purposes, what should we use for a start date?
Good. What I would do is look at the 60-day target and use that, right? So we've listed that in the solicitation. And then if, for some reason that is not the case, it's easy for us before the award has occurred to update that information when it comes time to negotiate an award.
Is there a sample template for the cost volume?
No, we don't have a template for that.
Will our 100-second video be posted in a public domain like YouTube?
So no, what John was saying was that it can be posted, and many people just chose to do that, and they shared the link with us in their proposal in the past. But there's not a requirement that we're going to show this to anyone else. If you want to upload it somewhere and password protect it, that's absolutely fine as well.
Is the 100-second video required to be exactly 100 seconds? Can it be over under?
Try to keep it within. I don't know if I think it says 100-second video. It doesn't say there's a tolerance in there, just within reason.
Follow up. Should the MOU milestones reflect a total of 1.25 million in that previous example, 1 million SBIR and 250K non-SBIR from a government user?
Yeah, sorry for not answering that earlier. The answer is yes. So your milestone should reflect the total cost, which includes the SBIR amounts and the non-government SBIR amount as well, or the non-SBIR government amount as well.
I did not see any mention in the RFP documents about RAPID. In X20.1, it was an important part of the RFP, but nothing seems to come up when I'm looking in X20.R.
Yeah, good question. So the need to have that terminology of RAPID was a lot. We really needed to have it because there were so many different rules between the existence of matching and not having matching funding. So we labeled one as RAPID where it had matching and the rest as normal. In this case, because it's a $1 million ceiling for everybody, because it's a little bit simpler, we didn't need to have a new term for it. It's just matching funds. So anywhere that you would have seen RAPID before, we either took it out if it didn't apply anymore, or we just called the section matching funding.
So they ask, is the RAPID form still required? It sounds like it's not then.
Well, that's a good question. So the fund matching form is required, and it's just called the fund matching form. That's one of those attachments that's on the DSIP site.
Let's see here. Is a white paper prior to being invited to submit a proposal considered a proposal in the similar work section?
Similar white paper. Can you read that again?
Sure. Is a white paper prior to being invited to submit a proposal considered a proposal in the similar work section?
So it's almost like it was an unsolicited proposal, if you will. I think the answer is yes. What I would say here is it doesn't hurt you to identify that you've proposed in other ways. It doesn't hurt you at all. So please do just announce it. Where it would preclude an award is if you have actually been awarded for the same work, right? So those are two separate questions that are asked during your proposal process. Be honest in both of them, but realize you telling us you've proposed elsewhere for this, even the same solution is fine, and we're glad that you identify it.
Is there any way to submit documents that are designated FOUO?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. So realize that we're going to treat all of these proposals as source selection sensitive. So it's very restricted on who's going to view it. We have a lot of safeguards around the tech behind that. So yes, that's okay.
What's the correct proposal number? Is it the one from the solicitation document or from the online portal?
So your proposal number is given to you by the online portal. The solicitation is the topic number. So that AF20 or 20.R-DCS01 is the topic number.
Who is generally designated as the corporate official, the CO, and authorized contract negotiator, ACN, for volume 1?
I'm not sure I understand the question in terms of who is normally designated that. I mean, there's two positions that I think are primary that I engage with on the program management side, and that's the PI and the CO. So I think it's just someone in your organization that, let me see if I can find that. Corporate. Stand by. Yeah, I unfortunately can't provide any additional detail on that. I would say historically we haven't had issue with the nature of the role of that person per se. So just try to identify the person that you think is either second most close to the effort, them and the PI.
If we've not received our cage code yet, can we still submit?
So you can, and realize just you would not be able to be awarded if you don't have a valid cage by the time of award.
Do we include X before 20.R for the topic number?
If it's a certain field that you're describing, I don't know the answer. I don't know if it's like a selection of drop downs or if it's a short answer response, because I don't know exactly where you're referring to. So, I mean, X20.R is the name of the solicitation. The name of the topic is AF20.R-DCS01. Yeah, I wish I could provide more info. I don't quite know on that.
Please, let's see here. Please clarify the primary signer can be another member of the DoD as long as they're a member of the Air Force that signs in support.
Primary signer. No, so the primary needs to be Air Force, right? What we're saying is that there's at least one MOU that is an Air Force customer as the PRI, but you can have other non-Air Force signatories as well, or sources of memorandum as well. So Air Force has to be the primary in this case.
And I think that goes along with someone basically answering the same, can the primary signer be a USAF member who's currently assigned to SOCOM?
Yeah, that's okay.
Some months ago, when X20.1 was active, there was a user needs spreadsheet posted on the AFWERX website. If you did some digging, it could be found. Has that spreadsheet been updated? And if so, is there a link to it?
Yeah, good question. So the answer is if you're in phase 1, discuss that with the program manager for the phase 1 right now. So it's either Matthew Scott or Ryan Erickson. In terms of just anybody being able to view it, no, that's not accessible. We actually pulled that down from the website. And so we will continue doing those, but they are all going to be called focus areas in the future. So we typically have differentiated between focus areas and user needs. We're going to lump those together into one, but those aren't posted right now. And that's something that we use for phase 1 primarily, such that when you're awarded phase 1, you're connected with the source of that focus area, or the sponsor of that focus area, to streamline the customer discovery and feasibility study process. But for direct to phase 2, doesn't really have any bearing. And we aren't going to post those lists with contact information for the government before you're on a phase 1. We wouldn't share that with folks.
If we are selected for award, will there be an opportunity to adjust the milestone timing and payout amounts during that contract negotiation period?
So the substance of the proposal cannot change, right? So, but things like moving around the dates, that is feasible. The answer is sometimes, and that's a kind of a one-on-one discussion that would occur with the contract officer. Also, let's see, all, some, I'm trying to find the text that actually references this. There is a point at which we talk about how the government reserves the right to award all, some, or none of the proposals, or something to that effect, which includes being able to award portions of proposals too. So the answer is yes, but it cannot change the substance of your proposal, and do not plan on it, because let me tell you, if everyone were doing that, then there's no way we could beat the timelines on this too. So hopefully that's helpful.
We had a clarification on that X20.R question. He was asking if he needed that in the MOU.
Oh, the reference to the topic? I think it's already referenced in there, actually. Okay, I see. Project under topic number. So that's just referencing the topic number. So I would say AF20.R-DCS01.
It says include references to invoices for the non-defense commercial solution. By invoices, do we need to provide a copy of the original official invoice?
Original official invoice. Let me see what section I think you're looking at. Invoice. You're talking about the cost volume. Let's see. Including supporting rationale, i.e. invoices from non-defense commercial customers. So I think the answer here is if you're trying to show the rationale for certain milestone prices, then whether or not it's in the original maybe hard copy signed with wet ink, or it is something that captures the truth of what the actual price was in the past, I think that would probably be fine. But I'm not quite sure if that's the nature of the question. But just if it is trying to justify the pricing that you're doing, I think anything that within reason can capture that is the price works. And also we say EG invoices. And so that's just one example of ways that you can capture that. Folks, I actually have to jump to another call now that we're at time. I know we have a number of unanswered ones. So to my team, let's make a concerted effort. We'll pull down the transcript of this one and we'll try to fill in the unanswered ones, which I see 132 at the moment. We're going to post this transcript. Let's aim to do this at some point over the weekend, and we'll talk offline on this. But post this video itself and the transcript with whatever answers we can filled in to afworks.af.mil.sbir.html. So I know this one was pretty rapid. I think we had some good answers for some folks. Other ones were a little bit too in the weeds. But please do reach out to the contacts identified in the solicitation for those types of questions. And we are in the final stretch. So I genuinely appreciate all of you for sticking with us. I know this was kind of fast and furious to get here. And then I wish you luck over the next couple of days. Thanks again to our team as well for jumping in. James, Jeff, Kyle, and John. I appreciate it. All right, signing out here.
Thanks, Steve. See you.